Show Up for Your Life motivational movement. And so ultimately, let me tell you, here's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about raising your expectations, because here's what I come to realize. For those of us who have high expectations, guess what? We accomplish high goals. We got high energy. We have high accomplishments. But for those of us who unfortunately have low expectations, guess what it results in? Very low life living. Low expectations also leads to very low outcomes and low results. And so I don't know where you are right now, but here's what I want you to do. I want you to be thinking about in the different areas in your life, when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your relationship, when it comes to your finances, when it comes to your health. I want you to ask yourself the question, what are your expectations? What are you demanding out of life? What is it that you're requiring out of life? And all too often, as we look on at other people who unfortunately are not reaching their expectations, who aren't having fulfilling goals, who aren't happy in their relationships, who aren't where they want to be financially, who aren't where they want to be physically, the common denominator across the board oftentimes is, guess what? They have very low expectations. And so they entered their relationship, they entered their marriage with low expectations. They entered their business, their careers with low expectations. They entered this particular year with low expectations. And so ultimately, that's the reason why they haven't accomplished any goals or any dreams. That's the reason why they're going through life just simply going through the motion. That's the reason why they're constantly frustrated. And so I want to create a shift. I want to help you to be able to get to the next level. And one of the best ways for you to do that is for you to pick up the pace in life, and for ultimately for you to simply raise your expectations. Now, why do you want to do that? The reason why is because your life is a direct reflection of the expectations that you have. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Your life is a direct reflection of your expectations. And so I'm telling you right now, if you are unsatisfied with your life, if you're unsatisfied with your relationships, if you're unsatisfied with your finances, chances are you need to elevate your expectations. Now, I'm not saying that that's easy. Sometimes you can find yourself in a set of circumstances that get you frustrated. You can find yourself in a set of circumstances that makes you want to start shrinking in your thinking, that makes you want to start minimizing your expectation, that makes you want to lower your expectations out of life, because life has a way of beating our expectations out of us. But what I'm saying to you is, don't shrink your expectations to meet your circumstances, but rather raise your expectations so that you can change your circumstances. And I'm going to repeat that one more time. Do not shrink your expectations in order to be able to meet up with your circumstances, but rather raise your expectations so that you can change your circumstances. So whatever area you are in your life that you are unhappy with, I'm going to challenge you that in the midst of being unhappy, in the midst of having the frustration, in the midst of trying to figure out, I'm going to challenge you that instead of shrinking in your thinking, instead of making excuses, I'm going to challenge you to start having a different level of expectations. Because here's what I know. If you continue to make excuses, if you continue to set limitations on your life, if you continue to live from that place of scarcity and impossibility, if you continue to operate at a low level, ultimately life will give you exactly what it is that you desire. And so if all you desire is to just simply get by, if all you desire is to simply just hang in there, and I bring that up because I can't tell you how many times I ask people, well, how are you doing? And they say, I'm hanging in there. And so my question for them is that what you're expecting out of life, to just hang in there? And if that's not what you're expecting out of life, then I suggest that you start changing your language and start changing your expectations. You know, this past weekend, I had the opportunity to sort of tune in. One of the shows that I really enjoy sometimes when I have the opportunity to tune in is to watch Super Soul Sunday with Oprah Winfrey. And you know, she'll have on some tremendous thought leaders and people that she has an opportunity to interview. And I don't always agree with the people that she's interviewing and what their thought process is. But she had a gentleman that she was interviewing this past weekend, a gentleman by the name of Wes Moore. And some of you maybe perhaps have heard of Wes Moore. And for those of you who haven't heard of him, Wes Moore is an author. He's a speaker. He's a former veteran. He's a former Rhodes Scholar. He's accomplished some extraordinary things in his life. But the reason why he decided to write the book, and the title of the book is called The Other Wes Moore, is because of the fact that literally when he grew up in a particular area that was a rough area. He had a rough childhood. His father wasn't around. And it just so happened that there was another young man about a year apart from him who was also named Wes Moore. And even though they grew up in practically the same neighborhood, even though they grew up with practically the same circumstances, even though they both grew up fatherless, one of the Wes Moores, the one that I'm referring to, end up becoming an author, end up becoming a Rhodes Scholar, end up becoming a veteran, end up working in the White House, and today is making tremendous impact. And the other Wes Moore, unfortunately, is serving a life sentence in prison for a crime that he committed for taking someone's life. And I was watching Wes Moore being interviewed by Oprah, and they were engaged in this dialogue. And one of the things that he was sharing was that how he actually has found a way to connect with the other Wes Moore, the Wes Moore that's serving this lifetime sentence in prison. And he said that one time they were having a conversation. And as he was trying to get the inspiration and the information to be able to write this book, they're having a conversation. He's thinking to himself, well, how can we have such two different lives? I mean, we basically grew up in around the same neighborhood. We grew up about a year apart. We both had rough childhoods. We both grew up fatherless. And so ultimately what they realized in the middle of the conversation, Wes Moore, who wrote the book, was speaking to the other Wes Moore, who's serving a lifetime sentence. And he said, man, you know what? Would you say, do you believe that we are a product of our environment? Would you say that we're a product of our environment? And he said that the Wes Moore who's serving that lifetime sentence in prison with great wisdom, here's what he said. He said that we're not a product of our environment. He said, rather, we are a product of our expectations. And I want you to write that down. If you're a note taker, I want you to write that down because that is a tremendous statement. He said that we are not a product of our expectations. We are not simply a product of our environment per se, where rather we are a product of our expectations. And so many of us right now, we begin to look at our circumstances. And so we believe that the reason why we've accomplished what we've accomplished or failed to accomplish what we've accomplished is because of our circumstances, perhaps. Maybe we didn't have the right support system. Maybe perhaps somebody betrayed us. Maybe somebody let us down. Maybe we don't have the right amount of education. Maybe we don't have the right amount of resources. And so we've found a way to blame our circumstances for what we've produced in our life, but yet and still somebody else who has the exact same set of circumstances has yet been able to accomplish at an entirely different level. So what is the answer? The answer then becomes that ultimately it's not your circumstances, it's not your environment that dictates what you produce in life, but ultimately it's your expectations. And so if you desire more out of life, then what it means is that you need to change your expectations. You need to change what it is that you're requiring out of life. Life will give you exactly what you ask for. And so if you've got very low expectations in life, then guess what? You're most likely going to live a mediocre life. You're most likely not going to do anything significant, regardless of what it is that you're truly capable of. And let me just tell you, same thing, the inverse, vice versa. You can have all the potential in the world. You can have this infinite amount of possibilities ahead of you. But if you have low expectations, very low expectations, then guess what? The likelihood of you accomplishing those things is slim to none. And so I was just thinking about just the other day, I was speaking to somebody and she shared something with me that I thought was profound. I was speaking to a new coaching client that I was taking on, and we were having a conversation. And she said, Andy, I've come to the epiphany when I look back at my life. She said that every major decision that I've made in my life was based off of necessity. And I said, well, that's interesting. Why do you say that? She said, the reason why I say that, she said, is, you know, when I was in high school, unfortunately, my mother was on drugs. And because my mother was on drugs, she was unable to take care of my little brother and my little sister. And so out of the necessity of taking care of my little brother and my little sister, she said, I decided to drop out of high school so I'll be able to help at home. And she said, in order to be able to help at home, I needed to have a little bit of income. And so I decided to go ahead and eventually get a job. And she said, Andy, once I got my first job, one of the things that happened is, unfortunately, I got pregnant completely unexpected. And she said, I went from flipping burgers to now looking for a better job. And really, the only reason why I went and got that better job was out of necessity to be able to take care of this child, because at that point, I was a single parent. And then she said, Andy, what ended up happening was eventually, she said, I got married and we had a second child. And she said, unfortunately, that marriage fell apart. And once that marriage fell apart and I came to the realization that I need to take care of my two children, she said, I decided at the age of 35 to go and get a GED and continue my education so I could get a better job, so that I could just simply be able to provide for my children on my own. And she says, so Andy, all my life, all I did was respond to crises and just simply put myself in position to just meet the necessity at the time. And we were having the conversation, and what I was telling her, I said, my goodness, I said, what a challenging place to live your life from, to just simply hope and try to get by. What a challenging place to live your life from, to simply meet the need at the moment. And I said that you can create a fundamental shift in your life if all you did was, instead of operating your life based off of necessity, based off of whatever was responsible or whatever showed up in your life at that moment, but if you just decided to live your life off of expectations, and that you did literally make the decision to set some high expectations, and set the expectations not off of your circumstances, but to set expectations based off of what you want to create and what you want to produce in your life. And share that with you, because I don't know where you are right now. And maybe perhaps you've been living a life where you've just basically been responding to life. You've been reacting to life. Things happen and you figure things out. You need more money, so you go out and you get another job. You want to have some fulfillment, so you go ahead and just date any and everybody. You want to go ahead and appease yourself and feel better, so you go out and you do frivolous spending, or you eat yourself and you're gaining weight and you're going into debt. Or maybe all you've been doing is simply responding to life. And what I want you to do is to stop for a moment, tell life time out, and I want you to recalibrate. And I want you to start thinking about, what are some expectations that I can demand out of life? And when you set those expectations, I'm going to challenge you to not set those expectations based off of your circumstances. No, don't set them off of your circumstances. I want you to base your expectations based off of what it is that you want to create, what it is that you want out of life. And why do I say that? Because your life, listen to me clearly on this, your life is a direct reflection of the expectations that you have out of life. And so if you think about those people who are operating at low levels, one of the things that I can assure you is that they have low expectations. That's one of the things that Westmore realized that separated him from the other Westmore. Two young men who grew up in the same neighborhood, both grew up fatherless, both had tough childhoods. One becomes extraordinarily successful, and the other one is serving a lifetime sentence in prison. What's the difference? Same environment. The only difference is a difference in their expectations. And so my question to you then becomes, what are your expectations? What are you demanding out of life? What is it that you want out of life? What is it that you're hoping to accomplish? You know, earlier this week, I was talking to a couple people, and there was a reoccurring theme, and I was so grateful to hear. And they said, Andy, I read your book, and I just want to tell you, it has had a tremendous impact in my life. I was speaking to somebody else. They said, Andy, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but I had an opportunity to pick up your book. And for those of you who haven't already done so, I would challenge you to make sure that you get a copy of my book. It's called Show Up for Your Life, subtitled 7 Principles to Living an Extraordinary Life. You can get a copy of the book on Amazon. You can get it on Barnes & Nobles. It's also available on Kindle. But you want to get a copy of that book. But there's been a reoccurring theme when I'm speaking to people. They say, Andy, your book has inspired me. Andy, your book has had me really reconsider life. Andy, your book has really impacted my life. Your book has changed my life. And when I hear those comments, let me just tell you, it brings me joy. But when I hear those comments, it doesn't surprise me. And I don't say that from a place of arrogance. But the reason why I say that is because when I decided to write the book, I didn't want to write a book just for the sake of writing a book. I didn't want to write a book just for the sake of making money. I wrote a book expecting the book to change lives. And so I gave thought to the stories that were going to go into the book. I gave thought into what the principles were going to be. I gave thought into the exercises that I was going to include in the book, expecting that if someone dared to open the book and actually read the book, that their life would be transformed. And so what I am listening to when people are sharing that with me is a result of my direct expectations. And so I say that because of the fact that ultimately what you produce in life, what comes your way, is a result of your expectations. And so one of the fastest ways to create a transformation in your life, one of the fastest ways to be able to create a shift, is for you to simply create a shift and a change in your expectations. You have to learn to simply raise the bar on what it is that you expect out of life. And I'll be the first one to tell you that oftentimes when you've got to raise the bar, guess what? It can get uncomfortable. Raising the bar oftentimes is going to require that you step outside of your comfort zone. Raising the bar is going to require that you get uncomfortable. And raising the bar oftentimes is going to require that you get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because people with high expectations also means that it's going to require high energy. It's going to require high action. It's going to require high output. It's going to require high accountability. And so it's going to require you to move forward and demand more out of you. I'll never forget this. You know, one of the things I love bringing up, growing up, my cousins and I, we used to just literally just long and wait for the opportunity that we would get to spend the weekends together. And so sometimes my cousin Rodney, my cousin Paul Adler, they would come down to the city that I live in, spend the weekends with me, or I would go up to them. And I tell you, we would just wait for those opportunities, summertime, or the opportunities where we'd be able to spend weeks upon weeks with each other and just really just playing and having a great time as teenagers. And so one of the things that we really used to love and enjoy doing is we would go in the backyard and play this little game. And this is how the game worked. We would get a broomstick from my aunt's pantry. And most people, and some of you know this, you know, the end of the broomsticks that she used to have, the bristles on the broomstick, you could actually take them off by simply just turning it off of the stick. And so we would turn the end of the broomstick off, and that would leave us with just the broomstick, the stick itself. We would go in the backyard and we would play this game. And so here's how the game worked. There'd be two people who were assigned to holding the stick. One person will hold the stick on one end and the other person will hold the stick on the other end. And the rest of us who were competing in the game, we would get in a single file line. And so the two people who would hold the broomstick, they would have the broomstick very low to the ground. And as we stood in the single file line, one by one, we would go up to the broomstick and step over it. And once you stepped over the broomstick, you would get back into the line, and then you would go ahead and require that the two people who are holding the broomstick would go ahead and bring it up just a little bit more. And every single time you got over the broomstick, you get back in line and you would ask them to raise it up just a little bit more. And so every single time you got back in line, you would instruct them to simply raise the bar. And once they raise the bar, let me just tell you, it would require that you have a different level of focus. Once they raise the bar, it would require that you exert a little more energy. Once they raise the bar, it would require that oftentimes that you get really uncomfortable. Sometimes you would look at it and you would second guess yourself. Sometimes you would look at it and in order to be able to get over it, you take a couple more steps back. Sometimes you would look at it and you would say to yourself, like, I don't know if I can make it. But every time you jumped over the bar, something happened. Every time you jumped over the bar, your confidence level went up. Every time you jumped over the bar, you discovered something different about yourself. But the thing that I loved about that game is that they weren't responsible for where they raised the bar, that at any moment, you could ask them to raise the bar as high as you want. So in other words, you made the decision, the conscious decision to raise the bar on yourself. Not because somebody else was forcing you to raise the bar, not because of the fact based off of how high the previous person jumped, but it was based off of what you believed that you were capable of yourself. In other words, you raised the bar, you raised the expectation on yourself. And here's what I'm saying to you. Don't raise the bar because Andy Henriquez told you to. Don't raise the bar because your boss told you to. Don't raise the bar because your wife or your husband told you to. Don't raise the bar because perhaps you read it in a self-help book. I'm telling you to raise the bar because you require more out of yourself, because you know that whatever it is that you've done up until this point in your life, you know that you have the capacity to do more. And because you know you have the capacity to do more, you're willing to dig deep. You're willing to get down and require a little more focus. You're willing to step outside of your comfort zone. You're willing to take a chance. You're willing to fall if it requires and if it's going to unleash something else inside of you. But you understand the idea and the concept that John C. Maxwell shares in his book when he talks about failing forward, that sometimes that we've got to be willing to take a chance. We got to be willing to fail in life, understanding that when we fall, it's allowing us to be able to grow and preparing us for what we're expecting out of life. And so stop going through life with mediocre expectations. Stop going through life not expecting much out of life. Life will give you exactly what you demand out of life. And so what I'm asking you to do is to grab a hold of life and literally for you to think about a big dream, some big goals that you want around your finances, around your spiritual life, around your marriage, around your relationships, around your health, around every aspect of your life. I want you to raise your expectations. Why? Because life will give you exactly what you expect. You are not a product of your environment, as Wes Moore said. Rather, you are a product of your expectations. And so think about it right now. What have you been expecting out of life? What are you expecting out of your career? What are you expecting out of your business? What are you expecting out of your marriage? What are you expecting out of your health? What are you expecting out of every area in your life? Your life right now, as it stands, is a direct reflection of your expectations. And so I'm going to challenge you to raise your expectations. I'm going to challenge you to raise the bar. I'm going to challenge you to step outside of your comfort zone. I'm going to challenge you to dig deep. I'm going to challenge you to learn how to take risks. I'm going to challenge you that if maybe perhaps in the past you found a way to shrink in your expectations and shrink in your thinking, and you continue to push your goals and minimize them and make them smaller and smaller, I'm going to challenge you to get uncomfortable and raise your expectations. And once you raise your expectations, I want you to get outside of your comfort zone and take massive action so you can make these things happen. Raise your expectations, because life in your life is a direct reflection of what you expect. All right. And of course, this wouldn't be Andy Henriquez if I didn't end by telling you this. Show up for your lives, ladies and gentlemen, because if you don't, nobody else will. All right. Well, listen, I am truly hoping that as a result of you listening to this message, that you are going to just reconsider what your expectations are in life. And that you're going to shake things up a little bit and get uncomfortable and just simply see what areas in your life that you can start changing and elevating and raising your expectations. Because ultimately, if you want to create a shift and a change in your life, even in the midst of difficult circumstances, even in the midst of trials, it's going to require that you raise your expectations. All right. Now, I want to take care of a couple more things. First and foremost, if you haven't already done so, I just want to tell you absolutely have to get a copy of my book. The title of the book is Show Up for Your Life, 7 Principles to Living an Extraordinary Life. All you've got to do is either go to Amazon.com and just type in Show Up for Your Life. Go to BarnesandNobles.com, type in Show Up for Your Life. Or you can go directly to ShowUpForYourLifeBook.com, ShowUpForYourLifeBook.com. If you are a person that enjoys reading your books via Kindle, it is also available via Amazon Kindle. And just simply, once again, type in the title, Show Up for Your Life. And I'm telling you, if you get your hands on this book, I can assure you that if you crack it open, the stories in the book, the principles that I share in the book, is really going to be able to position you that no matter what level you're operating at your life, it's going to help you to just sort of raise the game and take it to the next level. I share some profound principles, some profound success principles that is really going to position you to take your life to the next level. And really the book is inspired by, the story that has inspired me just so very much. My mom had an opportunity to come here to this country with very limited resources. And for over 20 years, my mom pursued the American dream. And she finally got her opportunity to open up a restaurant, a cuisine that she always wanted to open. And really, after about 2 short years of running and operating her business, unfortunately, that property was going to foreclosure. My mom, being devastated, not knowing what to do in that moment, she just decided to just risk it all and just show up to the foreclosure sale just to see if she could convince whoever won the property if she'd be able to stay. And in that moment, my mom decided to do something crazy, not knowing where she was going to get the resources from, having no idea exactly how the foreclosure process even worked. My mom decided to enter the bidding process, and she would ultimately win the bid on this property. It was a crazy, crazy story for her to come up with the money over the next 30 days, money that she didn't have. But ultimately, her life created a shift. Things changed for her because in a very, very important, crucial moment in her life, she was willing to show up in spite of the circumstances, in spite of everything that she had to deal with. And what I'm saying to you right now is you don't want to be living a life based off of your circumstances or even based off of your past, but rather you want to raise your expectations in life and make the conscious decision that regardless of what shows up in your life, that you are going to show up and that you're going to absolutely demand the absolute best and most out of life. If you want to get these core principles and ingrain them in your heart and be able to make them a part of who you are to help you accomplish your goals and your dreams, get yourself a copy of the book, Show Up for Your Life, 7 Principles to Living an Extraordinary Life. The other thing that I want to share with you, as all of you know, about twice a year, I do a storytelling intensive, a storytelling boot camp. I do have a storytelling boot camp that is coming up down in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It's going to take place next month. And so I want to invite you to join me in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And so if you are interested in joining me for the storytelling boot camp, the storytelling intensive, all you have to do is very simply just go to the website, storywithandy.com. Once again, that is storywithandy.com. When you get there, just simply fill out the very quick application. And once you fill out the application, that's going to entitle you to a very quick telephone message. Someone from my team will call you within 48 hours of filling out the application, and we will be able to connect. Either you and I or one of my team members will connect with you and give you all the details for our next upcoming boot camp so that you have enough information so you can make a decision as to whether or not you want to join us for this upcoming boot camp. I can tell you that if you know that you have a story and you've been trying to figure out how to leverage that story so that you can be able to attract more customers and more clients, how you can leverage that story so that you can build a profitable business, how you can leverage that story so you can have more impact and ultimately make more income, then you definitely want to go ahead and apply to learn more about this storytelling bootcamp, because the entire day we're going to help you to dig into your story, find out what your story is, teach you how to position your story so that you can connect with people, so that you can influence people, and so that you can create the level of impact and the level of income that you really want to make off of your story. So once again, you're going to go to storywithandy.com, storywithandy.com. Of course, for those of you who join us, if you haven't already done so, I want to remind you that we do have a private group that you'll be able to join us in this private group. And very simple, if you're already in Facebook, you can go into Facebook, just type in Show Up Group. I'm sorry. If you're in Facebook, just type in Show Up for Your Life. Show Up for Your Life. And the private group will show up. Send us a request to join the group, and we would gladly accept you into the group. Or if you want to get a shortcut to be able to join us, just open up a separate web browser, type in Show Up Group, Show Up Group all together, and you'll get a shortcut to be able to join us in the group. Send us a request to join the group, and we'll gladly accept your request, and that'll give you